and I threw a wine glass and it shattered.
Like, at
Um,
him or
no, just like in the outside, just
Greg and Victoria have re-entered the chat and spilt all on the timeline of their relationship and Victoria's fallout with Johnny on Nick Viall's podcast, The Viall Files, and we are here to break it all down. So welcome back to our channel, everybody. If you're new here, be sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel so you're always updated on all things Bachelor Nation. I'm your host, Zachary Reality, joined today by the lovely Allison Van Dam. And Allison, we're really lucky to have you here today for this panel because you were there during the recording of the podcast. So I have to know, how was filming the podcast? And then how did you think the fans' reaction was?
It was good. I mean, obviously, we start recording pretty early in the morning. So we started recording around like 8:30 in the morning. And these were kind of heavy emotional topics to start talking about that early in the day. But I was really happy of how it turned out. I felt like Victoria was very vulnerable. Obviously, we're probably going to get into it. She got emotional a couple times. So my heart was kind of breaking for her. And I really was just kind of proud of her for speaking her piece. Obviously, Johnny's gone on a couple podcasts themselves. And I think they have a right to say their sides of the story and get their point of view out there, because as we saw at the Bachelor in Paradise reunion, everything was so jammed together. Everything was so cut up. There was so much footage that was, left on the cutting room floor. So I think we have to rely on podcasts and other forms of media to actually hear what happened behind closed doors.
And I feel like we got that with this podcast. Like, I left it being like, whoa, like that was so good. It was almost better than an episode of Bachelor in Paradise, which is just so edited and like gimmicky. Like, I really like podcasts and like YouTube videos and just like online streaming services. They just feel so much more raw and authentic. And I feel like Bachelor Nation exploded after this podcast came out. Like, everybody was waiting all day. And then when it finally came out, everybody had something to say about it. Everyone was talking about it. Is this what you guys expected? I feel like you did a really good job of getting this interview just so quickly, just like a week after the show ended, but it also gave a few days for everybody to kind of process the reunion.
Yeah, I think we've been lucky to get a lot of great interview guests. I mean, every interview guest that we have is amazing, but specifically for Bachelor, like the Nate interview, the Tino interview, now Victoria and Greg, it's conversations that people are already having. People want to hear those perspectives, whether or not they agree with the guest or not. It's going to create buzz. It's going to create conversation. And yeah, I just think we wanted to create the opportunity for Victoria and Greg to speak on it. And clearly people were very anxious to get it up online. We typically release at midnight. And so we were trying our best. It's a 2-hour episode and we have our protocols, we have our editing, we have our sound mixing, all that stuff. And, typically our episodes come out at midnight, and that's already a really tight turnaround. And so we did our best to get it out as early as possible, but they wanted it even sooner.
Yeah, well, I have to say, as someone who listened to the whole podcast, it was worth the wait because we got everything we needed to get out of this podcast. I felt like Nick did a really good job asking the right questions. Obviously, he is good friends with both of them, but he still questioned them and held them to the fire and asked them to explain, like, where really was this timeline and what went down between you, Victoria, and Johnny. So we're going to get into it. And we have to start with the Victoria and Johnny relationship fallout, because Victoria wanted to clarify immediately that her and Johnny's demise had nothing to do with Greg. She called off the engagement 3 weeks after they got home from the beach because Johnny just wasn't all who he said he was during the show. He didn't have a stable job or career, and she felt misled by him when they got home, and she realized Johnny maybe didn't have his life together and wasn't truly ready to be engaged and married like she expected and expressed that she was while she was on the beach. She also shared that she had no idea what terms Johnny ended things on Gabby's season until she watched the show. So she was a little bit taken back knowing that he was the guy that wasn't ready to get engaged, but then went to Mexico for Paradise just a couple weeks after and got engaged. So she really just felt like he wasn't who he said he was on the beach. And I thought it was interesting because it almost felt like, from my perspective, that maybe Johnny was just really into Victoria and he just wanted to tell her what she wanted to hear so that he could keep her because he was afraid of losing her. And then when they got home, you can't really fake things anymore when it's the real world.
Yeah, and I think there's probably a level two of anytime you go on shows like this, you're going to have these maybe doubts in the back of your mind of a person you're pursuing. What's real? What's just for camera? And especially when you found a connection that they found that was so, true and deep to the point where they got engaged, you want to feel like you truly know that person and you trust them and what they're saying is what is actually happening in the real world outside of the cameras, whether that be, his current state of employment or what he wants to do, or the fact that, yeah, he left Gabby's season because he was not ready for an engagement. Those are things that I think should have been presented to her before she was asked, will you marry me? So that she could have made a more educated decision and truly known, where Johnny was coming from, who he is. And I think what confused me and kind of raised a lot of red flags for me was specifically when Johnny was telling her, oh, I own a bar. I have my own bar. And then suddenly that was
Yeah.
walked back and it was, well, I don't own it, but I manage it. And then that was walked back. Well, I don't actually manage it. I'm a bartender. How many times can you walk
Yeah.
past? I'm like, at that point, I'm not
And
sure
then
I
the bar was
believe anything you
closed.
say. Exactly. And so I'm like, as she said, I don't care what you do. Like, find a passion, do it. Even if that's driving for
Mm.
Uber, do it. But when you're continuously changing your story time and time again, I'm not going to believe you, even if you finally do settle on the truth.
Yeah, and Victoria also explains that she is a few years older than Johnny, so she wasn't trying to make him feel bad about not necessarily like having his passion or career together, but where she's at in her life as someone who's 29, she has her career, she has a house, she's ready for marriage. She said that all season. She just didn't feel like, their lives were aligning after the show, and I think that's one of the reasons why people shouldn't get engaged on Paradise. It's just not logical to get engaged in 3 weeks when you really just don't know someone. And it even feels like Victoria got caught up in the moment as well. I feel like she also probably wasn't ready to get engaged, but just, felt like it was the timeline of the show and this is what we're supposed to do. And the fact that it ended 3 weeks after they got home just really shows that they were not right for each other. And that's okay. But this story just gets crazier because of all the layers to it with the whole Greg and the toxic fighting. So let's start breaking that down because at the first Happy Couples weekend, they got a noise complaint because they were fighting so badly and she threw a wine glass at him. However, she clarified that the reason she did that is because he referred to her as having a home wrecker reputation, which is why she was never going to be the Bachelorette after he joked about potentially wanting to be the Bachelor if he kept his beard during was it Gabby and Rachel's season or Paradise? When did he want to have his beard?
So he was saying that if he had had a beard during his time with Gabby, because they were watching Gabby season air after Paradise had finished filming, but Gabby season was still on air. He had said if he had a beard during Gabby's season, they would have made him the Bachelor.
And I think he was joking, but I think that the joke just like became Victoria making a joke and then it kind of spiraled and it was like a domino effect. So it kind of also seemed like that was the thing with the cooking and cleaning comments that Johnny made. Like he was saying it was a joke, but then, Victoria said every joke has some truth. So Victoria, she wanted to clarify that she threw a wine glass outside, not at him. No one was in harm's way. She did get emotional during this part of the interview because she doesn't want to be that person. However, their relationship got so toxic so fast, and that's why she wanted to get out of there. So she asked the show for a couples therapist. She put an effort into the relationship, but after he said that she was being an effin' see you next Tuesday, Victoria shared that there are certain things there are no turning back from. And I'm wondering, Allison, what were your thoughts on the see you next Tuesday comment? Because Johnny basically was saying you're being a see you next Tuesday when Victoria said it's the same thing. And then he has all these British friends that she's never met. So where did you kind of land on that argument?
Yeah, I think what was the most interesting part of this was when she got emotional about, throwing the wine glass, about getting a noise complaint, and this was their first happy couple weekend. She said the next day, she basically told Johnny, this isn't healthy. This is a very toxic environment. And I don't think I necessarily want to pursue that. That was so early on. It was their first, happy couples weekend a few weeks after filming. And like you said, they fell in love and got engaged in 3 weeks. They pretty much wrapped up their relationship 3 weeks afterward. It didn't take very long at all for them to realize, no, we are bringing out the worst in each other and this isn't healthy for either of us. And so, I mean, we'll never like have that video footage of the wine glass being thrown. Do I think that
Too
excuses
bad.
Johnny for what he said to her? Absolutely not. I think it's interesting they went to therapy. They talked to their therapist about him calling her that. And yeah, like you said, he blamed having a bunch of British friends. So it means something different to them than it does to Victoria. My argument to that would be, well, Johnny, you're not British. And so why would you adhere
Yeah.
to the British version of that word when you know how it's going to come across to Victoria? I believe he said it to hurt her. I think he knew how it would land to her. So I don't think that really excuses anything, even if you have friends from a different country that use it in a different way. So I just think
Yeah.
overall, as Victoria said, she's trying to be accountable for the part she played in the relationship. It's not all on Johnny, it's not all on Victoria. It was just really unhealthy for both of them.
Yeah, and I think because she is a little bit older, she's had more relationship experience, clearly. So I think that's why she shared that she saw the signs of toxicity, which is why she wasn't willing to put as much effort into the relationship as he was. She shared she broke up the engagement after 3 weeks, but still agreed to work on things. And she also kind of shared that Johnny was the one that really didn't want to let go. So she had to have multiple breakup conversations with him, and she wasn't trying to string him along, but she was trying to give him the closure he needed and also be there for him in a friend. But ultimately, they brought out the worst in each other and they weren't meant to be. And I feel like Johnny finally accepted that on September 20th, around his birthday. And he also did share on the Almost Famous podcast that as soon as he saw the pictures of Victoria and Greg in Italy, that's when he finally just like let it sink in. Can you kind of relate to ever being in a relationship like this, or maybe you have friends where it's like one person is trying to say it's over and the other person won't let it go? So I think that is ultimately the reason why there was so many blurred lines, is because Victoria truly did check out so long before Johnny did, and that's why there is just like this blurred timeline that might not be making sense to some viewers.
Yeah, and I think Johnny, like you said, was really trying to fight for this, and it's always going to be harder when you're not the one who makes the final
Hmm.
call. I mean, I think they now know that it wasn't working for them, but in my experiences, it's always easier to move on when you're the one who's breaking up with your partner because you've had time to sit with it, to think it through, to know that that's the right decision. If you feel blindsided by someone, breaking things off with you or breaking up with you, you're going to then need your time to recover afterward when they've kind of fully closed that chapter and have moved on. So, I mean, it's going to suck either way. Breakups are never easy, no matter which person you are in that kind of equation. But yeah, I can understand from Johnny's perspective, he's then really trying to figure out, oh, it's over, process that, get closure. Meanwhile, she's already gotten her closure. She's decided that's the best decision for her and her mental health. And so she doesn't need as much time to kind of process it or move through it, or, maybe she's just, yeah, at a different stage of life. So she's able to kind of close that chapter quicker.
And I think it just made the situation more complicated knowing that this was played out on TV and in the public eye. So I'm sure a lot of the extra public opinions probably affected their relationship, and that the fact that the show was airing and Gabby's season was airing. So I can't even imagine like having so many opinions about something, but then like public, there's just so many layers. But ultimately, I don't think that Johnny is a bad guy. I think he just has a lot of growing to do, especially in his future relationships, but also just like as a person. And I would love to see Johnny on Paradise next summer. I feel like there still is more to his story, but it just wasn't going to be with Victoria. So moving on from that, we got to talk about Greg because he was there too. He's very patient and supportive to sit through the entire interview, which was mainly about Victoria, but he did have some key points that needed to be addressed. So they basically said that they had been friends for over a year casually. They admitted to having interest in each other, but it was never the right timing as Greg was in an on and off relationship with a girlfriend overseas, and Victoria wanted to go to Paradise. Greg didn't want to go to Paradise. He wasn't ready to do that. However, Greg's relationship ended in the middle of Paradise filming, so he admitted that he was hoping Victoria came back single, but got wind from Andrew that she got engaged and he was crushed. However, when Victoria came back engaged, she actually decided to call Greg since they did have some sort of chemistry at one point, just to kind of give him a heads up that she is engaged, and to make sure that it's not going to be awkward since they have a lot of mutual friends now. Johnny and Greg actually have some mutual friends in New Jersey. So that kind of clears things up, I think, why Greg and Victoria were able to date so quickly is because I feel like they always had like a thing for each other in the back of their minds, but they were never able to act on it because of all these other relationships they were both in the show. And now they were finally both single months later, so they were like, okay, here we go. What do you think about that? Is it like a wandering eye? Is it like it's not emotional cheating since they, were just friends, but like where do you
Mhm.
think it really went that like cultivated this relationship so quickly?
Yeah, I mean, I think any relationship, the best romantic relationships start out as friendships, in my opinion. And I feel like they
Mm,
had done the work and kind of laid a foundation of friendship. They have a lot of mutual friends. Clearly, like this whole group gets along very well. And they had talked about life before. They had kind of probably supported each other through their previous relationships. I'm not entirely sure about that, but if you have someone who knows who you are and has gotten to know you as a person, they're going to be that much better of a partner. So I think that also contributes to why some people are seeing this as such a fast move. Well, they weren't strangers. It's not like they had just met each other for the first time. So if you have that, comfortability with someone, it's going to be easier to maybe take that to the next level from friendship.
yeah, for sure. And Victoria shared that when her and Johnny, officially had that breakup conversation around September 20th, she called Greg. She waited a few days, maybe she waited a week. Started talking to Greg at the end of September. Greg went to Nashville. They knew it was wrong, but it also felt so right. So they were kind of talking about how they hit things off, but they also just didn't want to mess up with like the show airing and like this timing still felt icky. They were really nervous about getting into something so quickly, but couldn't help their feelings that I think have been suppressed for so long. Like, I really think they both had a crush on each other, but like I said, they never were able to act on it. So they finally just decided to go to Italy to test out their relationship and just try to see if there truly is something there or if it's just some type of friendship or attraction. Greg says, this is one of my favorite lines: Rome changed everything. It changed everything, Allison. It really solidified them, and they didn't want to be seen. So they really went to Italy with the intention of being so private. Can you imagine going to Italy and like just walking free with like no Americans? Like they didn't expect to get recognized. And then comes this random girl on TikTok who spotted them at the Coliseum. Why did they have to go to the Coliseum, Allison?
I mean, Greg even said, he's like, Victoria wanted to see it. We made it all that way. She
Mm,
wanted to go to, like, wanted to see. I mean, I would relate to that. If you went to a completely foreign
yeah.
country and there was a site you really wanted to see, go see it. But yeah, the whole thing was just kind of funny because it seemed so, whimsical and spontaneous and crazy. And this would be so far out of my comfort level because I would be so afraid that we'd hate each other while we were still on the plane and then have to get through this whole trip together. But clearly it worked out for them. But I think if I were in their shoes, something safer would have been like getting an Airbnb somewhere like very remote and just hanging out there. I don't know, but it was kind of a crazy like whirlwind trip because they pretty much he asked her basically out for drinks and I think they booked their tickets within 2 days.
Yeah, it was so in the moment. And I feel like they were in Italy for a few days being so low key. So I think that's why they felt like, okay, we can just go to the number one tourist attraction in Rome. Like, no one's seen us all week. But you're right. They probably should have went to Montana or Slovenia or even like New Zealand, like literally anywhere else. But they got spotted and it became a domino effect online. I mean, Reality Steve was posting pictures of them. A couple other fans were, who were in Italy, were tweeting about it and taking pictures. I got some coverage. Dave Neal got some coverage. A lot of other Bachelor content creators got wind of it. And yeah, then it became public. So they had to do what they had to do and they started to continue to date. They ended up going out more publicly multiple times. On October 31st, Greg asked Victoria to be his girlfriend. And they truly wish Johnny nothing but the best, especially Victoria. She said that she never cheated on Johnny. And Greg has plans to potentially move to Nashville soon. They feel like they're each other's person. They're head over heels in love. Greg said that Victoria will be coming home with him for the holidays to meet his nieces and nephews, which is a big step, especially for Greg. So, where do we see this relationship going? I think there's two sides of the fence here I've seen on social media. Some people think they're kind of trauma bonded right now from all this public scrutiny, and then it's just like a moment in time. And other fans are saying that, hey, if they've gone through all of this scrutiny and all of this drama so quickly, they already have this foundation. I think they're going to last forever. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think they're off to a good start. You know what I mean? We saw the same thing with Susie and Clayton. I feel like their experience very much bonded them, and if they can get through that, they can kind of probably deal with a lot of, outside of Bachelor Nation stresses, the day-to-day stresses. I think it'll be interesting to see if he does move to Nashville, if they move in together, how that goes, because I feel like that'll be an important step. But as I mentioned before, if they do have this very solid base of friendship, if they do really feel like they get each other and they know each other, then more power to them. I feel like then that's a great way to start a relationship. I think they're both in their late 20s. They've had relationship experiences they probably learned from. So they know what they want. And if they see that in each other, I feel like I'm willing to trust them on that. And I honestly wish them the best because I think they're both great as individuals and great as a couple.
Yeah, I'm definitely rooting for them. I think they complement each other really well. I do think that it is really new for them to already be like, we're each other's person, we're gonna meet each other's families. Like I do think they should slow the brakes a little bit and take their time just because they have only been like together for a month. Like I know they've known each other for a year, but they've only really been boyfriend and girlfriend for like a
That's
month and a
true.
half. So I feel like they need to slow it down. And I think that once all this public scrutiny dies down in the next few weeks, their relationship might look very different. But Victoria shared on her Instagram that she's done talking about it. She put her story out there. They're just excited to focus on living their lives and moving on from the situation. And we wish them all the luck in doing that. And we also want to support Johnny as well because I totally feel for him that, he wanted that happy moment with Victoria on the couch, and unfortunately, he had to be in the trailer by himself while, she was doing that with Greg. So it really sucks for all parties. The situation carried us through the finale. And what are your final thoughts, Allison?
Final thoughts are one of my biggest takeaways from the interview is when Victoria said, I never cheated on Johnny. I would have never cheated on Johnny. And Johnny knows that. She said they spoke after the Bachelor in Paradise reunion at their press event. And he even admitted to her, he said, I know you would never cheat on me. So it just made me question a lot of what happened at that reunion, why he was so adamant that something happened, why he kept bringing up the party. And so I don't know. That's just my like
The
kind of
party.
lingering, maybe. Yeah, it's my lingering, maybe not ick, maybe there's a better word for it, but question for Johnny is did you just want, those minutes on TV? Did you want people to start these rumors? Because if you're telling Victoria off camera that she would have never cheated on you, but that's your main argument on stage, I have some questions.
Yeah, I think some fans were saying like what Johnny didn't seem to take accountability on some of the things that Victoria was calling him out for. And Victoria, all she wanted at the reunion was for Johnny to just admit that he knows that Greg had nothing to do with the end of this relationship. And honestly, like shout out to Greg. I mean, Victoria was commending him for being so supportive through all of this. Like I can't imagine dating someone who's going through this breakup and then it's on TV, this toxic relationship, and he's just kind of jumping in. So he really was a trooper for hanging in there. And I mean, we definitely recommend you guys listen to the podcast. I feel like there's a lot of people recapping it and giving their thoughts, but it truly is worth a listen. It's a little long, but there's just a lot of good detail, especially if you were invested in Paradise this season. Like, this is the podcast you need to go to really close out this chapter. Allison, where can people check it out?
Yeah, so if you want to listen to the audio version, you can find that wherever you listen to podcasts, Apple Music, Spotify, Amazon Music, I believe. You can listen to ad-free if you have a subscription. Or if you want to see the videos going along with the audio, they are on YouTube under Nick Viall's channel. It's our most recent video. So depending on how you want to listen, those are all your spots.
The Viall Files. And I hope that you guys get Johnny on, but maybe wait like a few months because I feel like he has some growing to do, but I still want to hear more from him. And we definitely want to know what your guys' thoughts were. He has been invited. So do we have any updates on that, or do you think it's still pending?
He's been invited. It's up to Johnny at this point.
Okay, well, we'll see. Let us know your thoughts on Victoria and Greg on this podcast and the whole situation in the comments down below. We definitely want to hear from you guys and know what you're thinking. And be sure to subscribe to our channel here at Shared News. Ring the bell so you're always updated on all things Bachelor Nation. We are so close to our goal of 100,000 subscribers. So let's see if we can get there by the end of the year. I'm your host, Zachary Reality with Allison Van Dam. Our socials are on the screen right now, so be sure to give us a follow on our socials and say hello. Thank you all for watching, and we will catch you in the next one. Bye.